Welcome to Where Are They Now? We reach into the archives of Lenape, Shawnee, Cherokee, and Seneca High Schools and invite selected alumni to share memories and fill us in on their career paths after commencement. Since Lenape's first graduating class in 1961, Shawnee's in 1972, Cherokee's in 1978, and Seneca's in 2005, over 64,000 individuals have received diplomas from these four schools. Here now is your host, John Donaldson.
Welcome to another episode of Where Are They Now? Today we'll be reconnecting with alum from Cherokee's class of 2000, Jason Lutz. Jason is an architect at Kitchen & Associates in Collingswood, New Jersey. He currently lives in Mount Laurel. Thanks for joining us today, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
So we're going to take a trip back to your days at Cherokee and talk a little bit about that before we get to where you currently are at. So talk about some of the activities you're involved with. Very involved in soccer your 4 years at Cherokee?
Did, yeah. Started out playing freshman, worked my way up. I got called up to varsity at the end of my sophomore year and played varsity for the rest of that. Played travel soccer while I was in high school outside and started with Esham and started playing for them from kids that I went to middle school with, and then eventually everybody kind of grew apart, but I was still looking for more, and I got an invitation to go try out for a Cherry Hill football club, and I ended up making the team, which was great, turned into a great thing. I had a coach and trainer who was from Liverpool, England, which was fantastic, and learned a lot from him, so much in the fact that, interestingly enough, I ended up getting an offer for a full scholarship to go to Philadelphia University to play. But chose academics over sports, knowing that my body probably would not hold up. Which was a good choice. It was a smart choice, and I don't regret it at all.
Okay.
But yeah, sports was a big part of it. Yeah, it was a big part of it. I grew up playing sports all the time. My father was a baseball player, went to Millersville University and played baseball. He wishes that I would have played baseball, but I think I was just too tall for it.
Right.
And he was also a football player, but I just was never really big enough to play football. So walked my own lines.
Exactly. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So your senior year, you ended up joining the Technology Honor Society.
I did, yes.
What got you into that?
I was nominated for it. Well, as a suggestion. I had a teacher then who I'm still friends with, Dave Haney, who was a wonderful, wonderful person. It's so odd to think that at the time that he was actually younger than what I am now, teaching me in high school. But he saw that I had a real interest in mechanical, technical, and engineering and architecture, and he really kind of fostered me to grab a hold of that and said, look, your senior year, you're eligible. Why don't you go see if you can get into it? Let's look at your grades and see what other stuff you have going on, and let's see if we can get you in. He said it'll look good on your college resume, and anything you apply to, it'll help. So that's how it went. I went and I applied. Everything worked. I had good grades, got in, and that kind of steamrolled into a competition that the American Institute of Architects, or AIA, was doing at the time. Their student committee was doing, and he pushed me. He didn't even tell me he was going to sign me up for it. He just signed me up for it, which was hilarious.
That's one way to go about it.
Yeah, I came into class one day. He's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I signed you up for this," and I was like, "Oh okay," yeah, which was fine. He and I had that kind of a relationship.
Right.
It was nice because I never really saw him as a teacher, although I saw him more as a friend, which was always great and always kept me motivated to want to do more, because he just had such a belief that you could be better if you just tried.
Right.
And so went into that competition, and the program, or the concept for it, was out in an open field, sort of just unnamed. There was no specific location, but the building that you were supposed to design was a museum. And it could be any museum you want. It was left to your imagination and creativity. And I'd come up with something that was more on the sustainable side, and thought about the environment and how to integrate a building into the surrounding environment. So I had designed this building that was based in an open field over a stream that used water to partially power itself, and then also used rainwater collectors for all of its toilets and faucets. And little did I know, I was way ahead of my time, knowing that other people like Kohler and American Standard were already looking into things like this.
Right.
So it kind of was a little bit of a sign that I really probably should go this direction. At the time, the competition I think went for about a month, and at the end of it, I actually won first prize for it, which was fantastic. And I got a big high five from Mr. Haney and a big, I knew you could do it. And I said to him, I knew I could do it too. I just needed a little bit of a nudge.
So this is a month-long competition?
Month-long.
So there were stages as to things you had to do throughout the competition?
There were, yeah. It was great, actually. That was my first interaction with an architect. Interestingly enough, the firm that I work for now, Kitchen & Associates, was the sponsoring firm back then. And there was an architect who came once a week, and we sat down and had about a 20-minute critique. And you had to have certain things done each week, whether it was plans drawn, elevations, small little concept models. There was a work schedule and a process schedule, and you were supposed to meet those deadlines. And what happened then is after the 4 weeks, the 5th week was submission. And at the end of the 4 weeks, it was determined between yourself and your critic, this is what I will be submitting for the competition, and this is the format and the layout of what it will look like. So that last week was just spent putting it all together and getting it submitted. So that was great. That was really an interesting time. I had never met an architect before. I think it's interesting to think about what people think about architects and what we do, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding in two very different directions about what we do. I think a lot of people think that we are glamour fashion icons who just design really cool stuff, and then I think there's other people who think we aren't worth anything. But you know, it was interesting because he was a very down-to-earth gentleman and very smart, very smart. He was very cultured, and he's also his view and perspective was very broad, which was, I found that very interesting. So I really latched on to him, and I tried to get a job at as an intern. I was like, you know, even if I just have to
Before college.
Before college.
Okay.
I was like, even if I just have to get coffee for people, I don't care. I just want to be in an architecture firm. I really love this that much. And he laughed at me hysterically. He said, go to school for a year. He said, then give me a call afterwards. And I did. I went to school for a year, and I called him afterwards, and he unfortunately had decided that he wanted to start his own firm. So he had left Kitchen & Associates and started his own firm, and at the time he said, he goes, look, I really can't help you because I can't give you anything to do, and if I were to hire you, I would need for you to be gainfully employed, and
Sure.
I can't gainfully employ
By no
you.
fault of his own. I mean,
Yeah.
he's starting his own business up.
No. But he made some recommendations to me, and you know, I went through college, 5 years at Temple, and I met a fellow who had an office at the time out in Rancocas Woods, actually, by his suggestion. And you know, it was great. I ended up working at this gentleman's office for the next, well, all through my college career, and then he offered me a full-time job afterwards.
So
And
that's
then,
got to be a nice feeling right out of college. You know that you have employment.
Yeah. Well, you know, I graduated college at a time when the economy was still booming, and not like now. So it was a different time, and I think jobs were plentiful. The question more was
So
about.
you weren't sweating it as much as people are now.
Not really.
Yeah.
No, not really. I think the type of job I had was really where the benefit was. Not necessarily having a job, but doing what I was able to be doing at that given point in time with the amount of experience that I had was, I think, the benefit.
Okay.
It's a small firm, 7 people. You learn very quickly in small firms that you need to be a jack of all trades and you need to be able to do everything. And that's what happened. I ended up just doing everything. And in 3 short years, after working fully employed, I was pretty smart and pretty intelligent and a pretty good architect to start out with. So I have a lot to owe to that man.
Jumping back, there's only one thing I want to hit on because I hit
Sure.
on with everybody. I go back in the yearbooks and I take a peek in their yearbooks just to see. They usually have some section, a personal section of notes or quotes. You have any idea like what your personal quote or
Oh,
what
God,
was
I can't
in
remember.
there?
I can't remember. If
Do
you
you-
know, I would
Yeah,
love to know.
I know. do you know. I mean, it had something to do with Stairway to Heaven. Does that help you at all?
Oh, God, yeah.
You remember what it was?
Yeah, I do. It was friends and I. I was a big surfer back in high school and through college, and so were my friends. And we liked the mantra of life first and work second. You know, love and play first. And there was a certain enigmatic factor of Stairway to Heaven and the whole Led Zeppelin thing.
Yeah.
You know, we're just here to enjoy life and just be good people and,
The exact quote was to be a rock and not roll, so that was what you had put in there. So.
Yeah, it's funny. How do I remember that?
It's very funny. Most people don't remember every time I come on the show. They don't recall what they had in there. Not that I don't think I can remember what I have in mind. So.
Well, it's funny because if you ask me now how I feel about that, I probably would say that the other way around.
Right. That's kind of funny. So as you had mentioned, you moved on to Temple.
Yes.
You had some other choices.
I did. Yeah.
Temple,
I had Virginia Tech as a choice. Philadelphia University had offered me a full ride to come and play soccer. Temple, I had gotten into Temple. It was a small tangent. I have known my wife since my junior year in high school. And we were dating then. She went to Bishop Eustace. I met her through a friend. Her father is a builder. Her uncle is an architect. And I had a conversation with him my senior year about where to go to school. He said, look, I think that, there's something happening in Philadelphia right now. And what's happening is that Penn's traditions are changing. And the great thing about that is that Temple is swallowing them up. There's a famous architect you may or may not know. His name is Louis Kahn. And he actually was, I think, the savior of Penn architecture. The dean at Temple was one of the last 5 remaining direct students of Louis Kahn at Penn. And she said, well, this is great. Penn's changing traditions, so is Temple. And Temple went and hired all of Penn's professors. So he said to me, look, I've been a adjunct professor at Temple. It's a great school. You'll get a great general education. I think in terms of architecture, it's about to be bolstered. And you could get a Penn education at Temple's prices.
You got it on the ground floor, kind of.
Pretty much, yeah, pretty much. So that's why I chose Temple. I went there. I liked the school. I liked the professors. I liked the theories and the concepts behind what architecture is and what an architect is and how you're supposed to mold yourself. I just believed in it. I really just believed in it, and that had a lot to do with the dean that was there. So I chose Temple and never looked back.
Yeah, that choice obviously worked out really well for you.
Yeah, it was a great choice, and I would recommend it to anybody.
So as you were hinting at, when you graduated, you ended up at Kitchen and Associates out of college, correct?
No, I ended up at a small firm in Rancocas Creek named, long name, J. Randolph Perry Architects.
Okay.
For short, JRP Arch. I started out doing very small things, CAD things. I think within 3 months he realized that I was a little bit more equipped to do other things. And with a small firm, you'd need to be a jack of all trades. And I think he was, how can I take advantage of you, as any good businessman would. Right. And he said to me, he goes, look, I don't know if you're interested, but I have a lot of projects that have some small design charrettes that really need a looking at, and they're behind. Would you be interested? I said, yeah, throw it on my desk. I said, I'll do it. So my first project was a medical office inside of an assisted living building down in Woodbury. It was a renovation of an old, I think, if my memory serves me right, it was a button factory down in Woodbury, right on the railroad tracks. And wasn't big. It was only maybe 950 square feet. But tight spaces require a lot of thought. And I ended up doing a design that he loved, that the client loved, and I had designed, drew it up, made the construction documents of it, and actually they ended up getting it finished ahead of schedule when he was already behind schedule on the design. And I think that was sort of the green light for him just to keep throwing things at me.
Right.
I worked out of college with him, basically graduated to, I guess, 2008.
Okay.
2005 was the highlight of my career. The niche of the office is senior housing, 3-story wood frame buildings, okay. and which is a great project typology. I think probably one of the most rewarding, especially when you get to meet the people who inhabit the building, because they're very appreciative, very, very appreciative of what you're doing.
Is that common that you get to go back and see the people?
Not often,
okay.
Actually, not often. It's very hard to go back. Oftentimes, once the building is operative, with the levels of care that go into play, you really don't want to intermix new people because it tends to frighten them, especially in assisted living. Independent living is a different thing. I mean, much more social. People are basically just looking for, a big apartment building to have fun in.
Right.
So it's a little bit different. But within about a year of me graduating, the economy slid, and it was independent living basically ceased to exist, and then active adult followed it very shortly afterwards, and everybody went into assisted living. And the firm is small, but I will say for the firm, it is a leader in senior design in the Delaware Valley region, well known by a lot of contractors and senior housing management offices. So we started doing a little bit of that, but the highlight of my career was a house at his office, was a home in Morristown, which I had actually worked partially on in college, designing dormers and working on dormer details. But the house was the oldest home in Morristown. It was across a street, and we'd taken it off its foundation, moved it across the street, and added to it. That was 2001, 2002. And then a fellow, very wealthy fellow, came and bought it and said, I'd really like to add to it and complete it and make it more of an estate. The only unfortunate downside to the project was that it was on a very small lot. And so he walked next door, as I guess any wealthy man would do, and said to his next door neighbor, how much would it cost for you to move? And gave the guy 2 weeks to get an appraisal, and the guy came back. He offered him 15% over top, and well, that was that. You know, the third week after that, the house was knocked down, and lots were consolidated. And in the fourth week, they were prepping the ground for construction. And so that project was an interesting project because all that happened right in around September, October. So there was a big mad rush to get a foundation in the ground and settled and backfilled before dirt pushed back up against the foundation, before the ground froze.
Right.
And it complicated matters because the program for that house was bowling alley in the basement, virtual golf in the basement with a bar and kitchenette. The upstairs was a 2-story volume in the main addition, what was supposed to be used for banquets and community events. His garage we actually turned into an indoor basketball court / car showroom, which was that was a very complicated task to do that, but we did it. So and we managed. I think I built the biggest, deepest basement I have ever built, and we went a lot of, well, we'll just keep building it deeper because we don't know how tall we have to be right now. So we ended up about 14, 15 feet in the ground, just to the top of the footing, and then set the footing, and then the basement slab didn't really end up much higher than that, right. Maybe about 6 inches above that.
Wow.
So yeah, that was actually a really great project. Learned a lot. Worked with a lot of interesting people. The fellow who owned the house was an interesting guy. It was a ever-changing program. He'd always find something else on the internet that he liked and wanted to know how he could get it in. We ended up, last minute, his mother decided that she wanted to move in. She was a little elderly, so he said, oh, okay, well, let's put an elevator in the house, guys. So, and that was after we had the foundation already built. Luckily, that section of slab had not been poured, so we had to come back and excavate the basement again, put in another slab, put in an elevator pit.
I can totally see why this would be the highlight of your career. I mean, it's just an amazing project to work on.
It was.
So early in your career, too.
Right. Oh, yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah. And to think that at the time, God, what would I have been? 26, 27, I would have been doing this. So to think that I was able to do it then, intelligent enough to do it then, was pretty amazing. Working at Kitchen Associates now, which is a total 180. Most of the work at the smaller firm that I did was private work, private developers, private clients, residences. Most of everything now that I've worked on up to this point has been for more public developers via government agencies, doing a lot through Sandy funding, which has been a learning experience. Still big buildings though, which is great. I love big buildings. Very complex, a lot to think about and a lot to know, which is good. Keeps it always a challenge.
How many architects will work on a big building?
Depends. It depends. Depends on the size, and then really what dictates that is schedule. You know, anymore it's how quickly can I have this. So in my smaller firm, there was no ability for teams. It was you had to do everything yourself, and you were given 30 to 45 days to complete a good set of construction documents, which is difficult. You really have to know what to hone in on and pinpoint and design in detail for contractors. At Kitchen, it's a little different. It's 66 people, so we get the affordability to work in teams, which is pretty fantastic because as architects, we love collaboration. So, and then the more people that we get to work with, the more fun we are, and the more interesting things we design and come up with. So, there's a project that I'm working on now. It's a project in New York, so I get to get to be in New York, which is great. But and I'm doing this one myself.
Okay.
I have 30 days to
Wow.
do this myself. It's a feat, but it can be done. Definitely can be done. It just depends on what your experiences are and if you know what you're doing.
Do you get a lot of freedom to put your own spin on these projects?
Yeah, to some degree.
Okay.
Yeah, to some degree. There's a culture in architecture, and we have a saying: this isn't a job, because it's not a job. It's much more of a profession and a career, and it's a lifestyle. I mean, most people don't know this, but when you're in college, there's anything medical is always number one in terms of difficulty to graduate from, and architecture is number two.
Wow.
At every campus.
Yeah.
So to be able to graduate, I started actually at Temple with 175 people. I graduated with 41.
Wow.
So if that gives you any idea about the cuts that happen.
Yeah.
And so we have this culture, and when you get into a smaller firm, everything you do is your own, which is great. You will never learn more about yourself and about your ability to design. And sometimes, not all the time, most times, the owner and principal of those firms understand that, and they give you the freedom to kind of do what you want, so long as it's within reason and that it matches the stylistic views and aesthetic views of the office. And it has to stick to the mission. Larger firm like Kitchen, there's so many moving parts to projects, and one team may work on 75% of the drawings in the design to begin with, and then it may move to another team after it goes in for funding. And when that happens, there's certain things that get rethought. Contractors at that point are involved, so there's value engineering. So there's a lot of mechanics and cogs in the machine that are turning. Design is not a straight line, ever. It never is, and it's not easy. I think at Kitchen, the freedom is that you get to make each building you work on better, because it's a fresh set of eyes every time you work on a project, and you see things differently than other people. And by the time you get to your grudge match of 30 days of trying to produce 75% documents, you're fried.
Right.
So when it moves on to somebody else and somebody else sees it, the challenge there is to look at the design wholesomely, understand where it came from, and to say, okay, how can I make this better?
Right.
And how can I make it better, and how can I make it better so that not only will I benefit from it because the principals of the firm will notice that I know what I'm doing,
Right.
but at the same time, how will it make it better for the office?
Right.
And a better project for the office to promote and market so that we can get another project like this. In architecture, we don't do one project at a time.
Right.
We're always looking for the project afterwards.
I got to tell you, Jason, just listening to you talk about this, you can just tell that you're truly passionate about it. So way back at Cherokee High School, Dave Haney was absolutely right. He saw something in you, and
he was.
he
He
nailed
definitely
that.
was.
Yeah, he nailed it on the head.
He absolutely was. Yeah, I mean, I owe a lot about who I am to him.
So some point in here, you end up getting married
Yeah.
to your high school sweetheart. So
how often does that happen anymore?
So
2007.
okay.
Yeah, I've been married since 2007. Yeah, I met her at Bishop Eustace through a friend who was dating her best friend at the time. I met her at a Bishop Eustace basketball game. And, being high school kids, we showed up in all Cherokee stuff, which was great. Everybody hated us, which was fantastic, and we loved it. But, I met her, started dating her, and dated her all the way through college. She went to Arcadia, which is not far from Temple. She's a graphic designer, a very, very good graphic designer. And she's also one heck of a wife. There's a lot of stuff that she's got to put up with me in terms of ridiculous work hours and work trips, not being able to be around for certain things or having to work weekends. She does a lot, and she's very appreciative of everything, and she's a great woman. She's a really great woman, and she comes from a family who understands the work ethic, because her father is a builder here in South Jersey, a very reputable builder in South Jersey, and so she gets it.
So she's used to. Yeah,
she gets it, but she's always on me. Don't turn into my father.
Right,
Don't ever not be here. When we have kids, I want you around.
Right.
So, which is fun. It keeps things interesting.
You're also involved in CrossFit the past couple of years. You got involved with that?
Yeah, I am. Discovered it 2 years ago. I should say this. I had no idea what CrossFit was. I'd heard about it. I caught it on ESPN one day, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I was usually the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday guy at your regular Globo gym. And I got tired of it. Really got tired of it. And I said, I want something different, and I'm tired of going to the gym by myself. And I'm a very social personality, so I actually stopped going to the gym for I guess 2 months before I started CrossFit. My wife is like, I'm not doing any of that, and that's just ridiculous. And she never really played sports. You look at her now, and she's, I think, probably as much into it. In some regards, I think even more into it than what I am. But I've been doing it for 2 years. And
so do you go to classes together?
We do.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. Those who CrossFit together stay together.
There you go.
We do. We go to classes 5 days a week together, which is great. Nice little bonding experiences.
Yeah.
But no, it's great. I love it. I love the people. It's actually right here in Mount Laurel, and I'll pump that a little bit. The fellow who runs it actually is a graduate of Lenape High School.
Okay.
So and he's a great guy, absolute great guy. And that's nice because that's like its own little family too. We have our own little culture or cult, as other people call it. But that's okay. That's perfectly fine. We do what we love, and we love what we do, and all of us are there for the same purpose. So
that's right.
Makes things fun.
So kind of coming full circle, you were in the AIA competition back in high school.
Yes.
You're still involved in that organization, have some upcoming trips. Why don't you tell us about that?
I'm actually the 2014-2015 AIA West Jersey president currently. I graduated. I really wasn't so much involved in AIA in New Jersey during college because I was in Philadelphia, lived in Philadelphia for about 6 years, and got involved with AIA Philadelphia, which is its own brood of people. Good people. I mean, good people, really good architects. But you have to be into that to want to be into that. And I moved back to New Jersey when I was working, and most people don't know that to become an architect, you have to go through yet another ruling process. You have to go through 7 exams, but before you can get to those 7 exams, you actually have to go through 3 years of apprenticeship, or enough hours that translate into credit hours. And it's 7 hours equal a credit. So basically 1 day of your work is 1 credit. Okay. There's 756, I think that number is up now, that you have to complete. I was able to take the time that I worked from my junior year in college. There's 5 years as architecture degree, professional architecture degree. So my junior, first senior, and my thesis year, all of those hours that I worked could be accumulated and accredited to the intern development program, which categorizes and catalogs all of those credits. So I only actually ended up having to work about 1.5 years to really meet the amount of credits that I needed to sit for the architectural registration exam. I got done IDP, knew I wasn't ready. It took about 1 year, kept working, kept learning, kept challenging myself. Then I started getting into taking the exams. I'm not really a great test taker. If I was, I probably would have not been an architect. But part of the reason I became an architect is I got tired of taking tests. I was like, this is great. I think I can do things that are more creative. But I went and I said, I'm not going to study for one. I'm going to go and I'm just going to kind of see what it's like. So I went, I took it, failed. It's fine. I realized that there was more into this than what I thought. It was a little more overwhelming than what I thought. I ended up looking for something that was a good support agency, and I found the AIA West Jersey and their Emerging Professionals and Associates Committee. Sent an email, and they said, yeah, we usually meet on Saturdays. Why don't you come on in? So I met them over at the Cherry Hill Library on a Saturday morning, and fell in love with all of them. They were all very much like me. Had all done their tried and trues. Most of them were older gentlemen, 50s, 60s. Some retired, some not, but wanted to repopulate the architectural profession.
Welcome young face to come.
Totally. I think I went to 3 meetings, and then I got hit up for, hey, would you like to be on the board at AIA West Jersey? The only stipulation is you got to be licensed in 2 years. And I said, yeah, no, that's fine. So I got on the board as the secretary. Went to AIA New Jersey meetings. Networked, met a lot of people up north, which was great. Studied off and on for about 1 year just to kind of familiarize myself. And I got to the point in that 2nd year where I was like, you know what, this is either going to happen or it's not. And I just said, I'm just going to do it. So I set a test every 30 days and took it. There's 7 of them. I think I took July off, and by November, maybe July and August actually, and by November I had them all done. Passed every one of them, first pass out, and was done. Was licensed by, I got my approval letter of my license grant on December 24th, which was a great Christmas present.
Sure,
So
yeah.
I got that and haven't looked back. So I'm now licensed in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and the AA has been really good to me. And it's an interesting organization. It's a very old organization. It actually started way, way, way back when. The likes of Frank Lloyd Wright and Mies van der Rohe and very famous guys who said, you know, you really need
way back, yeah.
really need to have a, you know, an agency of this magnitude.
You had somebody that mentored you in a competition in AIA.
Yes.
And do you foresee you doing something like that, you know, as part of this?
We do. Actually, we do it already. We haven't done it last year due to funding issues, but we do run a student design competition. But that competition had been, I think, it was different. It was based around colleges, architectural profession, like the professional colleges that have accredited programs, which, you know, it's okay. But my goal this year as president and next year as president is more grassroots. I really would like to see it come back to high schools. I think that we have a big gap right now in this profession, and a lot of Meritus and FAIA, which are people who have been in the profession and are either retired or have been significantly rewarded for things that they've done. They're 55, 60 years and older.
Yeah.
And then there's this big gap between them and I'm on the high edge or the ceiling of that bottom rung and that bottom group,
right.
and there's really nobody in the middle.
Right.
And you can thank the economy for that. The
Yeah.
economy has killed the
Right.
profession.
Right.
A lot of people have left. But colleges are still churning out students and, you know, aspiring architects. And some of them are really good at what they do and just don't have an opportunity and a fair shot. And those people are people like myself who had an experience with somebody prior to college
Right.
that said, you know, look, I think this would be really something for you, whether it's a family member who was an architect or it was an experience like I had with a teacher who just saw something in me and said, you know, I really think you should just go for it. Just dive in head first and go for it. And those are the people that I think the AIA really wants to grasp hold of. And that's what I'm trying to do as West Jersey's president this year and next, is to really get back to high school students and give them something to aspire to. I think the world is too complex anymore for these kids, and there's too much going on and so many directions, and, you know, how do you hone one?
Right.
So.
Well, speaking of giving back, Jason, what advice would you have for students in the Lenape District based on your experiences?
I think focus. I think focus is one. I mean, I graduated in 2000. We're not too far away from that. I think everything is a little bit more instantly gratified now. But there still was a lot to go through mentally then about what you want to do, and it's very easily to be not focused on what you do want to do. And the world is a complex place. Reality really does kind of stink sometimes, but your reality is what you make of it, and the only way you're going to make something out of it is by focusing yourself and saying, this is what I want to do with my life, and I want to make a difference. Whatever you choose to do, you know, but I think focus is what really is required to propel you to want to do that, because that will motivate you to say that, you know what, I want to be somebody, and I want people to know who I am, and I want to leave this world when I'm 95 years old knowing that I did good, you know, and that I left a mark on society that I can be proud of and that my kids afterwards can be proud of. I think that's what we're all here for.
Great advice. Jason, it's been a pleasure having you on the show
Thank you.
today.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We've been speaking with Jason Lutz, an architect at Kitchen & Associates in Collingswood, New Jersey, and a member of Cherokee's class of 2000. Thank you for watching, and be sure to join us next time for more alumni interviews on Where Are They Now?